Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon, of course, when you are watching or listening in. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 60. Thank you so much for tuning in and following along with this journey. I hope that it continues to provide quality content and good resourcefulness for the listeners of the show. I think I might have just kind of patched together a sentence that didn't make a lot of sense, but we'll have to live with it a little bit there. So the premise of the show remains the same. Basically, we take a game from the past of teams that have played, and we run it back from one of the team's perspective. So we'll talk about things like preparation. We'll talk about the scout itself. We'll talk about matchups. We'll talk about depth charts, substitution patterns, whatever you want to say. We'll talk about in-game adjustments, all that fun stuff. And on Run It Back, I've been very fortunate for the majority of the series to have a coach from the game in question join us. And today that continues to be the issue. So we are today looking at Fresno State versus Wyoming. This game took place this year in 2021 on March 10th. And we have the associate head coach, Mandy Carver, joining us. Mandy, if you give me a second, I'd like to try to do you justice with a warm welcome to the show. Your resume is outstanding, to say the least. I'm going to kind of tip my hat to you. When I was going through, I was like, wow. Mandy has been the associate head coach at Fresno State since 2014 in June. Prior to that, she was an assistant coach at San Jose State for 2.5 years. She was an assistant coach at Cal State Bakersfield for 1 year prior to that. At both San Jose State and Cal State Bakersfield, she was also the recruiting coordinator in addition to being an assistant coach. And then we can move into the playing experience, which is just like, good job. I mean, obviously was drafted to the WNBA and played for the Detroit Shock in 2002. She played overseas from 2002 to 2009. And I really had to just kind of pick and choose because, as I said, extensive here. So won the French League, won the Swiss Cup, won the Adriatic League and the Bulgarian League and the Latvian League and the Arab Cup, and participated then in the Euro Cup. She was also the Swiss and Latvian League MVP, the Arab Club's tourney MVP, and a 2-time All-Star in Greece. And we're just only going to scratch the surface of a phenomenal college career as well. She was a 3-time All-Big Sky player at Idaho State, and she was also the nation's leading rebounder in 2002. So I am ecstatic to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. This is wonderful. Welcome to Run It Back.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You missed one stat though. I think I led the country in fouls and every other place that I played in fouls. So, not too, that one
missed.
doesn't show up a lot.
not missed, omitted, but but that's okay. I would rather tell any player that I've ever coached to tone it down a little bit than dial it up type deals.
Right.
So nothing wrong with a high level of compete. So let's get a little bit of background on your conference, this game. Obviously, it's a COVID season, so the adjustments that you guys had to make before we specifically move in to the Fresno State Wyoming game. Give me a little bit of a rundown of this past season and the adjustments that you had to make, and then the tournament that this is in.
So first of all, we didn't have fans. There were 2 occasions during the season that we were able to have fans, and they were both on the road at Utah State and at Wyoming. So that felt a little odd. We played back-to-back games. So typically in a year, we would play, home and away series with the majority of our league. So we play an 18-game conference schedule typically, which means that we only play 2 opponents one time, either once at home or once on the road.
Right.
This year, because of COVID, we played a 20-game conference schedule. And again, they were back-to-back. So we had played Wyoming on the road at Wyoming during the regular season on a Thursday, and then turned around and played them on a Saturday. And that was typical of our entire conference year, which was a huge adjustment. not have time to, really dive into the game and see what worked, see what didn't work, make adjustments, see them play other people and see what people try. So that was something, I don't know that anyone really liked that format, and I'm thankful that we have gone away from that.
Right, I hear you. And then, of course, the game in question, we're talking about the 2021 Mountain West Women's Basketball Championship. So you guys did, in fact, play the day before against New Mexico. So you're coming off of a win, and you're going to the championship game. And, talk to me about this scouting process. Like, who has the scout among your staff? Do you all share it, or is it that one individual? When does that scout get started? What does the time between the previous game and this look like? I know I layer questions, and I'm very sorry for that, but just take it away, please. Let us know what that time frame is like.
So I was fortunate enough, this was my scout. And so in tournament play, it's a little bit different because you kind of don't know who you're going to play until the end of the game. So the previous night we had played at 6 p.m. The next game was at 8 p.m. And they didn't allow coaches to stay in the arena to live scout like they typically do.
Right.
Tournament format. So that was a little bit different. So we hustled back after the game and, put it up on the TV and kind of sat there and watched it play out. And, you're going quarter by quarter, like, oh, we're going to play this team. Nope. Now we're going to play this team. And so again, you really don't know until the last minute. But with this team in particular, they don't do a lot different. They don't make a lot of adjustments. They do what they do. So they do it well, obviously. So they are going to play man-to-man defense. And they play their style of man-to-man defense. They're not adjusting too much out of that. Right. And then they run a motion offense where they make a lot of reads off of their screening actions. So it's kind of simple in that way, in terms of we know what they're going to do and they're not going to deviate from that. It's more what adjustments we were going to make, especially defensively. So when you look at this matchup for us, we were one of the top offenses in the league. So offensively scoring around 83 points a game. And but our defense leaves something to be desired. So we are this last year, one of the worst teams defensively. Now, you look at Wyoming, they are the best team defensively and one of the lower scoring offensive teams. So it was kind of a matchup of offense versus defense. And right. You can obviously, we didn't win that battle. So
that being said, the 2 times that you played Wyoming earlier in the year, was that also your scout? And
yes.
Did that then determine whose scout it was going to be based upon who you ended up playing? So it was like
yes.
Team A had won, then somebody else on staff who had Team A was going to present. So then when you discover that it's yours, because you figure it out, into the game a little bit, what, if anything, did you see that they were doing differently? And how were you going to present everything that you had to your staff and to your players? What was that process look like for your team?
So because of the quick turnaround time, it had to be really simple. And we had to figure out a couple of things that we were going to do. So, and again, our kids can't handle in those moments, right? So we find out probably around 10:30, 11 p.m. that night who our opponent is for the next day. And so we have to turn that around. And with technology, it's pretty easy because we can just send it right to their phones. And it's all digital and all the clips. So all the clips for me were already done. So I had clipped their previous tournament games. Right. So it's kind of a work in progress. So I probably have like 3 teams. And as every team drops out, you're happy because now that's less clipping and less video that you're watching. But it's a continuous process throughout the tournament that you are adding to that scout. Now, as coaches, we watch absolutely everything. And then I come with my suggestions. We all kind of mull it over and watch the clips and see, did this work with other teams? Defending them, no, maybe we should try this. It's kind of a collaborative process once some of the issues have been brought to the table. And one of the adjustments, so we play a lot of zone.
Right.
Not a lot of teams in our league play a lot of zone. So it's, and we do a couple of funky things with a high post catch. So, and with the middle of our zone, our center, being able to get to the baseline corners. And so we, in those moments, are trying to decide mostly about those little adjustments. Because again, because it's such a quick turnaround time, we don't have a lot of time to really, change too much. So that is what we're trying to decide quickly and defensively. And then offensively, because of the way they defend, we wanted to do a lot more lane line on balls as opposed to wing on balls. Because of the way they load up their defense, a little bit harder to help is hard from those lane lines. So making sure that we kind of adjusted our screening angles and positioning before we present that to the team, and then we show them kind of the options that we want to adjust the next morning, and make sure that we show a lot of successful clips. So we're not going to show things not working, making sure that so that they're like all bought in, they're on the same page. And then we have a shoot around, but unfortunately for championship game day, the shoot around is not in the game facility.
Oh,
so we get 50 minutes, not even a full hour, 50 minutes at a practice facility next to the game facility. Because of, again, the tournament format, men started their earlier games, like so the kind of the play-in games that day before our championship game. And again, because of COVID protocols and cleaning process that went into that, we didn't get access to the championship game facility on the game day. That
sucks. Yeah. So I got a couple of questions from the stuff that you had said in there. There's a few different ones, so I'll try to get them all out and not jump in when I pass it back, so to speak. When you said lane line versus wing on ball type stuff, you mean basically like where your offense is originating from, like your principal point of attack type deal?
Yes. Yep. So we did a lot more like horn sets, instead of more typical like wing on ball sets, just again because of the nature of their defensive scheme.
So, and then when you're normally you would, if you could live scout, you would go to the game and see stuff. But I mean, obviously as a coach, you have a lot of experience scouting via video. What would you look for typically that would, like, as you said, you manipulate your centerpiece in your 2-3, and those adjustments are made based upon things that the other team is doing. What were you looking for? And then do you also check film of, I know you said there aren't very many people within your conference who play zone, but I'm assuming there's one or two. Would you go back and look at film of Wyoming versus them in addition to,
Yeah. So making sure, especially there's like, not that many handful of clips of them, their zone offense. Again, it's a zone offense that they have run for years and years. There's not, they don't do a lot different. It's mostly about the people, it's the personnel, and knowing how to defend that personnel. And trying to see how anyone else defended it and had success.
Love it. So then this leads me into, which was my next question, of like what specifically goes in your video clips. So you mentioned that the process is that you have one big cumulative scout going for various teams, and then as they drop out, you're dropping those playlists and you get to the one that's going to be it, and you present that to the other coaches. Is it entirely focused on personnel? Do you get some of their actions in there? Do the coaches get to then trim what you're presenting, and what you present to the players? How long is it? And do all the players get the same things?
So as coaches, when we watch it, personnel is not a part of the film session. Now we may talk about, like player A only goes left or player B, turns over her right shoulder.
Right.
But we just in the conversation of watching the film, personnel is something we don't even spend time in a film session with our athletes going over personnel. Again, these kids have a pretty short attention span.
Right.
And they have it all on their phones. So they can access on their phones at any time. And we put the player personnel as their responsibility to watch. So that is, and there's, depending on the scout and the team and the player, we don't try to overwhelm them, but again, showing them ways that they're going to have success defending it. So again, if we say player B goes over her right shoulder, we're going to put clips in that player personnel folder that they're going to watch of her turning over her left shoulder where someone maybe forced her another way and her missing the shot.
Right.
So we're not gonna show, I mean, there may be one or two clips, see her turning over her right shoulder and it's an easy bucket, but we're not going to show her turning over her left shoulder and like just dunking every single time, because they're going to be like, you told me to force her that way, and look at all she does is score. So we're very calculated in that way.
So there is a psychological element you're saying in there.
A little bit, yeah. And then as coaches, we want to spend the majority of the time, especially it's the third time we're playing them, right? So at this point, we don't need to watch every clip under the sun. We want to watch mostly our first two games and see like what we did well and what we didn't do well, because both games previous were close. And now the hard part in this situation is we kind of rationalized, which I think was probably a mistake. So when we played at Wyoming, it is the highest elevation in America. It's 7,200 feet. So it's really hard, especially for us. We're coming from sea level. We're playing there. It's hard to like catch your breath a little bit, especially that first half. So that was like, okay, we weren't able to run that first night very well because, elevation. All right. We also didn't have our typical bench due to quarantine. So they they had come into contact with some positive people, COVID positive people. Now they didn't test positive, but they weren't able to make the trip. So we are not only at 7,200 feet, but we also don't have our typical bench. So again, all right, now we're in the championship game. We're like, yeah, we didn't have our bench. We were on the road. Those games were close, but so we shouldn't. And as coaches, you don't want to think like that, but you kind of are getting excited about the prospect of winning a championship, and like not that it should ever be easy, but you kind of like, that's who we wanted to play, right? Like we didn't want these other people. And I think unfortunately our players did that too.
Right. I think that's,
and I don't know how you could remedy that, or how you could, I
was just gonna say, I think that's an unfortunate reality of both coaching and playing, right? Like you are going to predetermine and make some judgments, and your weighting of how much time you're going to put in and work towards and all that definitely is measured by the way that you have that internal feeling. You don't compete the same way every time type deal. So that being said, what did you really identify? I know you mentioned like changing the origin spots, etc., but were there any particular matchups that you wanted to attack? Did you want to modify pace of play or change anything like your rebounding strategy, or what were some of the intricacies that you guys decided on for this particular game?
So our pace of play is pretty high, especially offensively. We want to get out in transition and we want to score in transition. Typically throughout the season, 30% of our offense is transition opportunities and scoring in transition. And, we thought that was our advantage for sure, because in this game, this was Wyoming's fourth game in 4 days. it was our third game in 3 days. So, we should have the advantage. They had to sit out the last 3 weeks of the season because of COVID. So they hadn't played a game before the tournament in about 3.5 weeks. So we were thinking they might be a little rusty. And again, we should be able to transition and run on them in that situation. So definitely something we wanted to do. And again, like I said, the on-ball setup, making it a little bit different in the location. And then defensively, how we defended the high post. So typically, defensively in our zone, we allow the high post to take an open shot and we keep our center down.
Right.
They don't come up on the catch. Wyoming had a really good forward who they put at the high post. She kind of steps in and steps out, and it's how the flow of their offense. She killed us when we played them during the regular season. So our adjustment was to have our guard take the high post catch. That didn't work in the first half. But that was kind of our adjustment. We're like, we're gonna have our guard take it. It'll be great. It'll work out. To keep our center down to rebound, because we know for us rebounding can kind of be our Achilles heel. Our goal is to get to 40 rebounds a game. And in this championship game, we only got to 32. So that's kind of telling as well. Rebounding for us and defending in transition. Again, Wyoming wasn't a transition team, so we didn't have to adjust much there.
I was just going to ask, within that 40 number that you guys have, do you have a breakdown of like X amount offensive, X amount defensive? Does that move based upon the percentages that the other team shoot? That's an interesting target number to me. I'm curious to know how you arrived at that.
So I did a project a couple years ago because our rebounding, we were always in the bottom of the league. And I did a project a couple years ago where I evaluated all teams that made it to the NCAA tournament or teams that won championships. And their rebounding number was over 40 or over.
Right.
Kind of took those stats and compiled them all and came up with numbers that would fit us and a goal. So each half we want to get 5 offensive and 15 defensive to get to our 40.
Okay. And then in terms of, so I'll move into a little bit of like in-game adjustments and then evaluation of the scout type stuff. For anybody who doesn't know, probably not the best second quarter that has happened would be a fair statement. So at the halftime, you guys are going in, I typically ask at the half, you're going in down 8, and you've just had a very, very poor output for the second quarter. So what kinds of things have you guys noticed, are looking to adjust? How are you treating it from a motivation standpoint? Is it a friendly environment, or is it a very serious, how do you guys give feedback in that kind of scenario?
So, first of all, in the last 2 years, we have had several comebacks in the third and fourth quarter where we've been down 16, 17 points. So as bad as it feels to go in down 8, I don't think anyone was stressed. Now, is that the pattern that we want to develop and continue to foster? No, we don't want to have to make this daring comeback from nearly 20 points all the time, but for some reason, and we've had a younger-ish team, we've had younger players play a lot of minutes, and I don't know if that urgency happens in the last 10 to 12 minutes for us. Hopefully now we're getting a little bit older, and we'll have that maturity that we won't just wait till the last minute, so that's something we're addressing in the off season as well. But when we and because of COVID and all of the stressors and the challenges, it's got to be a completely positive environment, especially this year. We're not yelling, we're not wild, right. We're just, again, these kids can't handle it. They've had this horrible year, of trying to be young and sit in their house. So
Right.
we're trying to keep it light and positive. Like, this is no big deal. We just played the worst quarter we've ever played in the history of our program. So that's over, thank goodness.
Right.
And we know like that we can score a lot of points and score a lot of points quickly. So I don't think, I mean, again, we went in not stressed. We knew we needed to adjust a couple things. And just have confidence to watch the ball go in the basket. I mean, some of the shots, like watching it back, not necessarily horrible shots we've made, you know, all year. Just, I think the moment, the bigness of the moment, we started to feel in the second quarter. And I think it got a little bit away from us,
Right.
but we were able to rein it back in the second half, just not enough.
No, I hear it's definitely hard playing from behind as you were, and it's definitely difficult coming from a quarter where you don't get everything to change your mind psychologically. But I thought the effort was second to none in the second half. I really did. Looking back on it, in terms of the report that you generated, the walkthrough, the meeting with the coaches prior, do you think there was anything in preparation that you could have done differently or better that, like, now in hindsight, you're like, I think on a short turnaround, I'm going to add that in next time type deal? It would make a big difference for the girls, or it would help the other coaches. Is there anything that was sort of missing from that process now that you're looking back on it?
I do think being more dramatic about how good their defense was. I think I probably took for granted that we can score and we can score on anyone. And like that.
And I'm sorry, you did win the second half. I just want to put that out there as well, right? So like,
we didn't win the game, but we won the second half.
No, you did win the second half. So
got to take those small victories. But I think, again, taking their defense more seriously and making like being a little bit over the top about it. So like, we are serious about how good their defense is going to be. I think that takeaway. And then the other takeaway is changing our the way we were going to guard the high post in such a short turnaround. It didn't go well in shoot around. So when we talked about how we were going to like tweak the defense a little bit, it didn't go well in shoot around. And I think because it didn't go well and the kids didn't really have success doing it that morning, they kind of doubted it. And that's, you could feel it and see it kind of in the first half. Our rotations were slow. We missed a lot of rotations.
Right.
And that we shouldn't have done that. We should have just done what we do. We had confidence in it. We had done it all year. And as soon as we felt that kind of heading south during the shoot around, we should have just been like, all right, nope, let's try this other way.
No, let's do what we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then that brings up a question that I find interesting. And I think that it's a subjective question really from doing a lot of these shows, but how long will you stick with a game plan that may or may not be working? And how do you evaluate that within the moment type deal? Like how many things does it need to be before it's, you know what, maybe that guy or that girl hit a few extra shots, or no, we're off base on this one and we need to go back to doing what we do well? What sort of are the triggers that you would look for?
I think especially late in the season, your team, like, the looks on their faces,
Right.
The body language, and like when they're just like a step slow, they're not trusting the game plan. I think you can see that pretty quickly. And I think we felt that pretty quickly, and we were like, okay, we got to make some adjustments fast, and scrap that plan and let's
Right.
go to plan B and plan C and plan D. And I think that's, as coaches, you've got to have, at least 3 plans ready to go. And maybe like in case of emergency, break open this glass and try plan 4,
Right.
So
Throw an audible in there.
Yeah. So going in, like, okay, we're going to try A. All right. We're going to try B. If we have to get to C, it's looking kind of scary. And if we have to get to the in case of emergency, watch out.
Will you convey that with your girls that like, hey, we might have multiple plans of attack in this game, or will you just let them know the first one and then decide as a staff, no, we're going to move away from that?
I don't think, and again, this is my opinion, it's ever good to give them all of that information, because
Right.
now they're going to be questioning, well, if we have 4 options and the first time option 1 doesn't go well, they're like, let's try this other one, instead of, you know, especially us females, we're overthinkers. So we're just not going to like do it. We're going to like think about it, evaluate it, analyze it, maybe think some more on it. So that, we have talked to them like throughout the year in the process of all the games being played, that like, listen, we have options. We'll come up with a plan. We'll, you know, if things aren't going well, we're not going to just continue to do it, but you've got to trust us that we have things in place for when something isn't working.
Very interesting. Like it. And then my last question, sort of about the preparation process, and we'll move into some film if people don't have any questions following this. But do you do anything throughout the season, or even at this point of the season, that is like an evaluation of your scout and your preparation process? So like, will you take your scout after a game, and obviously not being married to the result of if the game was a W or an L, like, will you then evaluate, look at the clips that you sent, change what you're focusing on based upon your post-game analysis? Because like we say, hindsight is 20/20, so to speak. Do you do anything like that?
I think throughout like the summer where we have a little bit more time, we definitely evaluate kind of some different things like offensively, defensively, areas that we want to focus on moving into the year. And then, you know, something that is newer that we did last year because we had more time is we took the best returning players by position and kind of did a scout on them and sent them out to our players throughout the summer. So
Right.
they could start to prepare mentally, like, okay, this post player's returning. She's probably all conference. These are her moves. We send them clips. We send how we want to defend her, kind of like a mini scout, but just so they know, like throughout the summer, this is what you're working. You're working to be, you know, player A, player B, this point guard's back. Like we want, you know, it not to be a surprise when, you know, she's crossing you over, because this is her like go-to move. So kind of from that standpoint, evaluate it. Now we have evaluated our defense, and that is our big focus this summer and moving into summer workouts and the fall, and trying to be better defensively. Because if we can have that offensive power, we should be able to defend a lot better.
Love it. I mean, it's always an evolving process for all of us, right? So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. If not, I'm going to move into some game film here. As I mentioned just prior, Mandy, I'll play each clip a couple times. Just let me get set up here. So one time we'll just sort of, everybody can see what's going on. And then the second, third time, I'll try my best to describe what's happening. Third time, let us know your thoughts as to what's happening here. Are we good with this size, and is the playback speed okay for you? Is it clear?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so this is your first defensive possession of the game. And my notes just basically say, you know, talk me through your 2-2-1 back into your 2-3, and then take a look specifically, first clip, how you felt you're doing, you know, with your bumps, your high hands, your contests, all that kind of stuff. And you know what you would change, if anything. So for anybody who is listening and not watching at a later time, it's a full court inbounds, and 2-2-1. There's appears to be sort of like a bit of a matchup and dropping happening up top. Fall back into a 2-3. They do post the ball at the high right elbow. Put it back out. We swing sides a couple times here. So offensive right side, swing again. And then the ball gets driven and dropped off towards the, you know, the offensive right 21 spot, or inside the paint type deal, and she misses a layup. So Mandy, please take it away. Tell me what you see, what you think overall.
So we're typically in a 2-2-1 on made shots. So we do a good job of taking away the middle. We want them to, have to work a little bit. They pass back and forth pretty easily. As you can see on the high post catch, we have our top guard defending the high post catch. So the ball comes in and that player is like deadly from that area, kind of a little bit off the elbows. It's kind of a weird area. She can catch on the elbows as well, but what they do with her, because she is a good 3-point shooter, she steps in and out of the high post. So we wanted our top guards to be able to take it because they're really spread out. And the point guard up top is not a 3-point shooter. So we felt like we could use that adjustment and have our guards sink in and not really pay her any attention, especially if she's out there pretty deep. And then in the corners, they have dropped 2 3-point shooters, and then they have their center under the basket. So on these high post catch, she's dropping. So we want our forwards to be able to match to those corners and be able to get there on the catch. Out of this, we just didn't rotate well. So, I mean, we shouldn't get beat. We shouldn't get blown up on the drive, like when the ball swings back around. And they love to drive baseline. They do. And again, this kid cut kind of, our bump was slow. We should have a quicker bump. We should have a better angle. Again, because it's not a shooter, we should have been talking about that. And then we get beat. Our center has to come help. She probably should have bluffed and recovered a little bit because, again,
Right.
that guard isn't a shooter. So probably not following the scout the best there. And then our backside was late. And I think she was worried about having a shooter on the backside and didn't get the helper rotation in time. But her little 5'6" hustling but did a good job of getting a tip on the ball. We just should have come up with the rebound.
On the backside there, do you always want them coming over the top in the helper, or do you try to fight from underneath type deal? And then,
So, I mean, we don't want to make it a hard and fast rule because it's, you get there. I mean,
right,
she probably should have come over the top. It would have been the quicker route for
Right.
her. And she was just late.
and then if this baseline drive had resulted in a second side pass, which is a difficult pass in my opinion, the helper would not be the same person who is closing out. Would it be the top guard, or would it
Yep,
be?
it's the top guard. So yeah, so she should have been on the inside of that post. Our top guard is going to rotate to the backside.
Perfect. Love it. And then in terms of the 2-2-1 part at the beginning, the only other question I had about it really is what is your expectation overall? Are you pressing more for time and turning them a couple of times, or do you have both a 2-2-1 that is like that and then also like an intense we're trying to steal the ball, we're maydaying all over the floor and hands in every passing lane type deal?
So we want to get steals. We do want to get steals. We want to get deflections. We want to create offense out of the press and our defense. In the beginning, though, because it's like the first series of the first press of the game, we're kind of feeling it out. Like, okay, are they doing their typical press break? We want to take away the middle, and our guards do a pretty good job of learning throughout the game, and they do end up getting steals, deflections later in the game. We do turn up the pressure, a little bit better, I think, in the second half, where, we're forcing them to maybe dribble a little bit more, but they are such good passers within the press. And again, they like to hit that middle, and we did a good job initially of taking that away. But we do have another press, a 1-2-2, and then we have kind of a twilight zone or a buzz zone that we'll get into, where we're trying to really turn up the pressure and trap and get steals and make people throw the ball away or take crazy shots. And against a team like this, we have to use it when, again, in the second half, we're down and they want to lengthen the possession and we want to speed them up so we can try to score and get back in it.
By the way, just as a total aside, has nothing to do with what we're saying. I love quarters. We play quarters everywhere else in the world. The women's game has evolved more readily than the men's game at the NCAA level. Just a fun, friendly little jolt there. Could we?
No, I haven't understood that, especially because the NBA does. Like, I don't know why the men would stick with their halves. I can't understand why they don't advance the ball in the second half. Again, because if you're trying to be like the preparation for the professional leagues, every professional league in the world does it. Could you imagine how fun the NCAA tournament would be on the men's side with that
Yes.
instituted? I'm hopeful that it'll happen soon. Our games have changed a lot with that.
Well, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning when we were talking that you averaged just about 82 points per game. And almost every team that I speak to, that a lot of coaches, like, they laugh at the fact that my team averages like 76 a game, and we're considered really, really bad for our league. And then a vast majority of D1 teams are scoring in the 60s. And I'm like, you guys have way better athletes than I do. So I don't know what's going on there. Sorry, next clip. Total aside. Sorry, everybody.
I liked it.
First half court set for you guys. And then, I mean, basically my notes were just, are you looking to target somebody? Are you looking to see a screen coverage that they're using? Are you looking to establish a player on your team, get them going, so to speak? For anybody who's listening, the ball starts in the offensive right slot, then moves to the right side of the floor, and then is swung back around, ends up in a top pick and roll at a good angle, like a step up type angle. She comes off, she almost hostage dribbles for a second. It's towards the single side. There's an overcommitment from the ball side help, I would call it. And then it's past to the corner and a shot for three, which goes down nothing but net. So take me through it. What were you guys, why is this your first play, and what are you looking for basically?
So the player that gets the ball that's coming off of the on ball was the Mountain West Player of the Year. So really dynamic guard. Want to get her involved early. She's really good going to her left hand. So set this up so that she can come off going to her left hand. And the way that Wyoming defends, it's kind of a drop coverage. They go over the on ball, especially on her. And that's why we want this lane line action to try to give her more space, to try to make it harder to help. And we call it like swiper coverage. So the defender on the baseline offensive player kind of bluffs, swipes, tries to get her hand on the ball. She makes the right read. I mean, she's got three players on her, makes the right read, makes the kick to the shot in the corner, and we were set and ready to hit it. So, I mean, perfect execution.
Is the snake dribble and the hostage dribble common in your conference? Is it a skill set? I know that from reading your bio, you work more with the bigs type deal, but is it something that's worked on extensively? Is it something that you see often?
I think that it's something, especially for these two guards, so number 1 and number 0, that they are getting better at. So this was their sophomore year. They're very good with the ball. They're very good dribbling and coming off of on balls. And I think that's an area that they're going to look to expand their game. On the women's side, you don't typically see it probably as much as you do with the men, where they can, slice up a defense pretty handily. And
I think
again,
Markle is great coming off of this, and I really thought that she sort of took that hesitation dribble, and just like you said, like I did coach on the women's side one year at the university level. I didn't see it very much at all, so I was just wondering if it was something that's common for sure.
Yeah, definitely something. If they can add that to their bag of tricks, like, whoo, they're gonna be even tougher to defend.
For sure. Love it. The next clip, skipping one, there was one in there that it was just something that I liked. I think I can't remember what it was, but my note on this, I thought this was an interesting set. This is what I would call like a 77 or a double drag action. So the ball gets brought over to the right side of the floor. Typically a double drag is in transition. This is in the half court, but same idea. But you rolled both players. So the first one slips out, and then the second one does like a formal roll right to the front of the rim. Is that action that you would typically do, and what are you looking out of that, like after that initial action? Is it like a roll replace that you look into?
So we run this to like a high-low action. So she just takes the shot. So typically the first screener slips, so we can look for that slip. We typically do this this set if someone is hard hedging. But this is just a little bit to create more space for drives, get a little bit longer possession. So the guard would typically come off, she kicks, we roll that other big to the block. The forward is flashing to the high post. Zero should have continued to the corner. She kind of stops and uses her body to set a screen for the shot. But out of this, we would, so zero would continue to the baseline. One could, I mean, she could take that shot or pass through the high post. Our low post then would reverse seal and we would look high-low. If we didn't have anything out of that, we would reverse it to the single guard on the right wing and then continue into another on ball. So we would have two shooters away and then we would continue into this on ball and the 4 and 5 would replace each other. So it's a set that we run a lot and have a lot of success scoring out of.
So when you teach that, would you teach this set in parts or would you do a walkthrough of the whole thing and let them play in it? Like, how are you teaching the reads and the progression of, hey, this is our first option, this is our second option? What sort of are the teaching points that you guys would have?
So we typically don't start by teaching it with the double high screen like that. We teach it out of a single screen. So we start with the single screen and then we have the high-low action and still the single guard coming off, going towards two shooters with the post players interchanging on the backside. So we teach that first and we have a lot of breakdown out of this. So there's the guard breakdown, there's the post breakdown, we put it all together and then we add in the double screen. And we have the same actions out of it.
Love it. So the next one was one more that I liked from you guys. For anybody who's listening, the ball moves to the left slot. There's a chin screen on that pass. Then after that action, the ball is brought back and basically it turns into a pass and follow, empty side pick and roll. And it looked like to me briefly like there was going to be a help side stagger here that just didn't really happen. But there's a pass over the top. Don't get the layup that you want, even though it's pretty deep position. Makes the right pass against the help, wide open three. Doesn't go down, but like the set overall. Talk to me about progressions. Talk to me about what you were looking for here initially. And
yeah. So we love this set. It puts our two best players. So number 11 was actually the Mountain West Player of the Year the year before. So right. This is two of the best players in the league in an on-ball open side set. So we score out of this a lot. It's a great option. Again, one's coming off the on-ball to her left hand, which we love. And we have 11 rolling to the basket to finish with her right, which is, again, something that we love. And you're right, this should be it's a fake stagger on the backside. It's just to keep the defense occupied and worried about the shooter. We've talked about using this set to actually, add that shooter coming off and hitting them because, you've got to do that. We probably didn't do that enough because you can tell the defense really isn't that worried. They're kind of right. Loaded up on the on-ball set. So we are going to look at this stagger actually being a set for the shooter so that we can mix it up a little bit more this year. But yeah, great pass, great catch. I wish she would have went up on this, but they're coming three at her and she makes the right kick and that kid's a great baseline 3-point shooter. It just doesn't go down.
Right. And you said it doesn't look like they're too worried. It does look like you moved the low man to me though, that like the girl didn't switch, she did move with and step up, and then the help is coming from quite a bit farther away. So I thought it was successful on the help side there. I like the set overall personally.
Yeah, we love that one.
Good one. Defending in the half. So this is one that is a little bit of an eye twitch moment from the second quarter. So the ball's moved to the left side of the floor, and this is, I would imagine this is the start of their continuity type motion offense that we were talking about. Turns into sort of like a stagger away. The ball's passed back up top. And then she drives the ball against an over closeout, I would say, gets to her right hand, throws it over top of the help on a great cut and a help side screen for a finish at the basket. So talk to me about your rotations and what you would like to see. I'll let it run through one more time for you. But how did you play it? How would you like to have played it?
So the way that we want to defend this set, yeah, you're right. This is what they do. They stagger, they back screen, they flare screen. So on the stagger, we should be chasing. We look like a pinball right here. We should be a little bit closer and chasing her. So that wasn't great. And we're not trying to switch out the top of the stagger because that is, they run it a lot and they typically don't get a lot off that stagger. So we should be chasing. We should only switch a tight curl.
Right.
So, I mean, we weren't, again, this is lots of opportunity of growth this summer for our defense. So again, should have been closer, should have been trailing.
I'm just going to say, sorry, Fresno State women. I think you may have a hard practice in the next week or two whenever you guys get back on the court. And that might be my fault. I apologize.
Watching this, I was just like, our defense. Oh man, we could be so much better. I mean, it makes me optimistic because we can be so much better. Like, oh my goodness, if we could just do like a couple things way better. Wow. So we want to switch this back screen because what they like to do on the back screen is get, they want to post up. We have 3, 5, 6 guards in the game. And they played a lot of minutes. And so what they want to do is they continue to run this until they can post up one of those guards. So we wanted to switch it and keep the 5 always our center, always in on the back screen. So we should have switched this. However, on this, the back screen action, the drive happens and our 5 comes over to help and doesn't have an awareness to what's behind her. If she just backs up, she could have again bluffed and recovered at the driver, but these guys do some crazy switch action. It was very unsuccessful, not part of the game plan. So, and again, our closeouts and our containment of the ball in our player-to-player defense is a big emphasis this summer.
So let me just make sure. Oh, I lost it because somebody was coming in. Sorry. Let me make sure I have this right and correct me if I'm wrong. But on this back screen that is right here, so I'll do one of these for you. You want to switch that.
Yep.
And then as we continue moving, do you still want the help to come from there? Or I think you said stunting and recovering is what you want ideally.
Yep.
So then if it's a stunt and recover, this player should continue and try and
get back in front. Yeah.
Test out, get in front type deal. Right. Perfect.
And she is far too talented of a player to get beat this badly.
Well, the interesting thing is a few times on this show, I've had the where is the actual breakdown moment type deal. And even though she over closes, I don't think that's the actual breakdown. I think the actual breakdown is, like you said, the pinball action of getting through here and hitting everybody just places her at a real disadvantage. Right now in her mind, she's like, shit, I got to get back type deal.
Right. And again, she's far too talented to not know how to chase a stagger. Like that is like, she's too good to have that be how she is like zigzagging through those screens.
Sorry. So when you're chasing, you want over or under? What's ideal for you guys?
She should be on the outside hip. So she's too deep this way right now. So she's got to be outside hip, getting over, and then 0. If she curls it, 0's taking her.
Right. I got an upset little girl. Normally my mom helps with babysitting while I do my show, and she's in the background pouting right now because she's hungry and she wants her daddy's attention. So I'm going to sneak a hug when you're doing the next explanation. First set of the second half, weave the ball screen type action is my note. So like we said, we went to half. There was a discussion. Didn't have the second quarter that we wanted. We're coming back out. What are we targeting with this? What are we trying to get? Who are we trying to get going? And are we okay with the shot in terms of the up and under there, and what could she maybe do differently type deal? So for anybody who's listening, sorry, it's what I would call your standard weave to ball screen. So it's a DHO to the right side of the floor, a DHO to the left side of the floor, and then that player is coming off of an angled ball screen downhill, and she goes up and under and misses the layup.
So this set is, again, one that we have a lot of success with, because it's a little bit different than a lot of things that we run. We don't do a lot of handoffs. So we go handoff. Now, typically 11 in the past, we've had her kind of brush block and get down to the short corner. But because we wanted to have more space for drives, we decided to keep her up high, and it kind of turns into a horn set. So 0 at this point comes off the handoff. She can come off of that lane line screen, or she could reject it and come off of 11 side. So we kind of made that adjustment later in the season to give our guards more options. Now, 0 is masterful at finishing at the rim. Like, if you were to pull all her clips, you would be blown away by the way that she has like English and spin. She can get the ball up on the rim, on the backboard. So now, you seeing this for the first time and maybe not knowing the type of player she is would be like, that's not a great shot. I've seen her make 50 of those, like eyes closed, like no question. So
Love it.
I think if you listen to the announcers in this game, they're like, oh man, not a great shot. Why? And we're on the bench, like, we don't have a reaction. Like, we're like, yeah, that's again, she can finish right, left, eyes closed, behind the back. Like, we're fine with it. Just wish it would have went in.
Yeah,
like 80% of her shots do in that situation.
May I ask, is this, you did mention that 11 sometimes sets kind of like a brush screen type deal and then rolls down. Do you ever treat that like a flare or a hammer screen, so that when 0 penetrates, when she gets all the way down, there then becomes
the base pass? We haven't. So again, this was a late in the season adjustment to keep her high, to give our guards the option to continue to weave if they wanted, for her to reject the screen. Typically she would have been in the short corner, so that if we could have a post slide action off of the drive. But again, because of the way they help, we wanted to keep everyone high to give more driving lanes.
Like it, I had to redraw it. The coach in me was like, nope, that's not what a pass is. So let's do that.
Make the dashed line. I like
it. That's it, right? Like, so then the next set that I had falls again into their continuity, and it's actually 2 clips. And I was wondering if I was correct that you made an in-game adjustment from the first one to the second one here. So I'll play both of them and talk to you about it. So I mean, the ball's passed to the left slot, it gets moving, so it goes to the left wing. We set like a pin down at the nail, and then we reverse it again to the other side. And this is just basically like a continuity action. So they're doing the same thing again, where there's the pin down at the nail from the other side. And then when that happens and it gets reversed this third time, there's a coming together on this elbow. And it looks like it's supposed to be a flare screen, but it looks like she just slips out and dives. I would also use this as probably like a high split action too, if it was my offense. But we see here that there's not really much of a screen. And then on the slip out, she's wide open, ends up missing the shot because of a great recovery block. But then the next set, you get the same action. And when we choose to play that one, I thought this was brilliant, actually. And I thought maybe it was an in-game adjustment, but you get a 3-way switch up here. So there is your flare screen right here. And the person guarding the person who is flaring goes to the slip and then passes it off to the person who's setting that nail pin down. Am I correct? Was this an in-game adjustment that you guys had made, or did your players just do something brilliant?
It was not an in-game adjustment. 11 is pretty savvy and knew that she probably needed to be on their post player. So you can see as they come together here, she just says, I'm taking her, you take mine. Otherwise, number one's going to get posted.
Right.
And 11 could recognize that. So that was her in that moment making that call.
Like it. Like it's, in my opinion, it's great to see three-way switches. You don't see them happen often. And I thought it was a nice adjustment to a possession not so long previously that they had got slipped out on.
Yep. And that's 11 playing a lot of minutes, being a senior, being savvy in that moment, and just making a defensive play.
Well, I mean, also
they get the stop.
A tribute to a great coaching staff teaching her over a large period of time, of course. We got a sideline out of bounds that I liked. It's a box set for you guys with a cross screen. Comes up to the ball, hands it back, and then comes off of a ball screen. But at the same time, there is a back screen for the person who handed it back. And then that just turns into like a continuous type action where the ball screen goes and sets an away screen or a delayed type screen for somebody coming for the ball who gets downhill and does the little flip up. So talk to me about this set, and is it the option that you wanted out of it? Is it the option you typically get? I'm assuming you score lots of points on this, actually.
So this action, I love this sideline play, mostly because I do all the sideline and baseline sets. So
there we go.
This action is supposed to be for 11 to get the ball. And the setup, what I would have wanted is 0 to be the second screener because she has the smaller defender. So she should have been on the far block. But that didn't happen because if they were to switch, then she has the smaller defender. So 1 is supposed to come off of this on ball, and it's this on ball. She has the option to shoot off of it, but it's really for 11 to get free and be open on the block and get her the ball. Now we do continue out of it and have, so after they set the back screen for 11, we do have the option for the shooter to come off, which we got 0 coming off and then her getting to the basket again, because she's such a crafty driver. So after this, they continue for these staggers. 20 should have continued off of that next screen as well, but 0 gets the ball and does a great job of driving to the basket.
So I have a hard and fast rule of any time that within a set, you're not getting the particular option that you want, or you see something else, go get that layup type deal. If you're calling this particularly set for a shot type deal and somebody's going to drive and making the adjustment, you're okay with that, I would assume, as a coach?
Yeah, I think so. Thinking back in the set, the reason I had called this sideline is, again, 11, one of our best players, one of the best players in the league, was the Mountain West player the previous year. She had 7 points in the first quarter and then didn't score the rest of the game. So this set was to try to get her a touch in a place where she's comfortable, close to the basket. I would have loved for her to touch the ball in this set, but we scored out of it. So totally fine with that. But the idea was to try to get her offensively involved in the game a little bit more, right, especially in the second half.
Like it. This next one is a defending clip. I thought this was interesting how the strange alignment that ends up happening here with a high and a low on the ball side kind of creates a weird defensive alignment to help from. And I'm curious, within your principles, what would be your low man? What would be your most important person in terms of where you're helping from? So basically the ball ends up on the left wing. There's a person on the elbow and a person on the block. And it doesn't even become a ball screen because the elbow slips out to the wing at the same time that there's a drive over the nail. And then that ends up drawing the double for the late wraparound or perhaps missed shot. I don't know which one of the two. And then that results in just basically a wide open look for an and one type deal. Where would you help from in an ideal world? And how does this manipulate sort of your help principles?
So first of all, I think they're in their zone set because again, we flip back between man and zone. So I think they
Right.
went to run their zone set and we're in man. So now this is how we would want to help. So the post leaves the post player. Now the problem is 11 gets caught watching her person and doesn't get to the helper. So we want to stay in this man set principle that we have drilled. We may be changing our man defense, like I said, so this could change. This rotation maybe would look different in a year from now. But on this drive, 15 is going to come and help. 11 should have gotten to her player, and 1 needed to stay connected to her player so there's not an easy kick out. We want her, she probably could have been a little bit more in the lane line, and as the drive happens, come out to her player just to make it look like it's not a wide open driving lane. And again, all things we're going to be working on. So this was great by 15. 11 just didn't get to her spot on the helper.
Right. So just for anybody who's watching, and Mandy, correct me if I've got this wrong, we still do want to help from here as we did, but then we want the helper to drop in from there, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, and 1 probably, I think she should have been splitting the lane line before the drive happened.
Right.
I would have liked to have seen her in a little bit more because again, 24 is not a 3-point shooter.
Right.
And then as that drive happens, she can come towards her player, just, making that driving lane not look as wide open.
Are you more of a proponent of stunt and recover or one-way stunts, I believe they're called, where it's like your position is your help and you're already clogging so that you don't have to go one direction and come back? You're already there and you're just kind of showing and then retreating to it.
Yep. So we want it and again, in this situation, our defense is going to look a little different, but moving forward. But yeah, we don't want her to have to change directions because that's too slow. So we want her to be there and go one direction to her player. Yeah.
Love it. And then, I mean, it's not run it back without this question. I ask it basically every week, but this is a long rebound. You guys bust out. It's in the 4th quarter with about 7 minutes left. And you get a ball screen and a step back transition threes, yay or nay for you guys. What are your philosophies on it? Who can shoot them if you're a proponent of it? How do they earn the right to shoot them? All that fun stuff.
That's a good question.
I ask it every week because it's such a varied answer.
Right. Like this is a great shot because it went in. Like if it doesn't go in, it's not a good shot. Especially, I love this kid. This isn't her strength, right? This is not her strength. This is a senior in a championship game making a big play.
Right.
And that, again, it went in, it's a great shot. If that does not go in, not a great shot for a kid that is not her wheelhouse. We constantly are talking to our players about what is their best shot, who should have the ball in tight situations, and where, like, what we want to happen in those moments. So and sometimes those are really tough conversations because,
right.
Kid 15 thinks that she should be in the game with 10 seconds left taking the 3. And that's not necessarily the case. I love the confidence, but that is a constant conversation where we are showing them factual information about what their best shots are.
Right. Trying to remove the emotion from the discussion and just say, like, maybe this isn't, you got to think of the opportunity cost of that shot a lot of the time. Maybe this isn't right for you. But there's not like a metric you use in terms of a shooting percentage or something.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we want, we do a lot of shooting drills within practice, and you have to consistently hit those goals to be able to continue to shoot threes in games, even in practice. Like, we're not letting you just come down and chuck threes in practice because that's leading to bad habits as well. Now, Uh, 35% and above, we're letting you shoot the three.
Right.
But a step back three, we want you to be in the 40s. A step back three in transition, we need to be in the 40s.
But when you say that, do you have to be in the 40s with all of your shots, or do you have to be in the 40s specifically with the step back? Because somebody who's actually in this chat very recently sent me something that showed that of the 10 players that shot 100 or more step back threes this year, only one of them shot over 40%. And he substantially shot a better percentage than everybody else. But if you look at the list of the 10, you'd be amazed at how many of these like top elite guys on step back threes are shooting 34, 35%. So I'm curious to know if that metric is on all threes or if it's specific to the step back.
For us, it would be all threes. And again, step back threes are not.
Yeah, I don't. I've actually had the argument with some players this year already. Like, hey, you come play for me, you're not shooting that shot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think to one shoot a step back shot, that you've had to have practiced, like you said, a lot. Like you've got to have the footwork down, you've got to have the balance, and you've got to create the space. And it's very rarely a good shot for some people. Now, some of our smaller guards need it, but not one of our more favorite things. So yeah, I think you've got to be over 40% in all your shots, because we're not trying to take that shot a lot. We're not taking 100 of them. Heck no.
Right.
No.
No, I agree. All right, so we move into the end of game section. So let me see if I have this scenario right with all these clips. Let me just do a quick scroll through to make sure they're in the correct order. It looks like they are. All right, so the end of game section begins with their ball, sideline out of bounds. They're up 1 point. There's 33 seconds left in the game. You guys had just made a massive layup in the other direction to bring it to the within one. And they, okay, sit then, Munchkin, sorry. Sorry, Mandy. And it's an ATO for them. So they called the timeout to advance. They've drawn up this play. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about like what you guys are saying in the huddle. Do you give them only the defensive side? Do you give them the defensive and the offensive side? Are you reviewing timeouts, all that kind of stuff? And I'll run the clip just to refresh where you're at. But we're sideline out of bounds. They inbound. Basically, there's a pop that is not open, and then they inbound to that person who is setting the pin down. And she just kind of panics, rips through, gives it back up top, and then you guys take the foul. And I think I could group this with the next sideline out of bounds as well, which happens immediately after. And they have difficulty getting it in, and they turn the ball over. So let's talk about these two and sort of what you're saying in that huddle. I'm sorry, there was a lot in there. I apologize.
That's okay. So we go over sideline end of game plays during shoot around. So we go over their baseline sets and their advancement sets. And we went over these sets in shoot around that morning. So we were prepared. We executed defensively pretty well. We have to take the foul because, I mean, the shot clock and the game clock, there's not much of a differential. So we're talking in the timeout about, going for the steal, how they're going to set up, because we know what sometimes it's a guess a little bit, but we know typically what they're going to do in the end of game situation. Again, defensively, I thought we executed pretty perfectly. We didn't get the steal. We had to foul because again, there's not enough differential time to let it play out for us to have time to get a clean look. So we take the foul. They have to inbound again because that only puts us at 14 fouls. Right. And again, we're talking the same thing. We are trying to get a steal. Now, I wish on this next clip, we would have gone for the layup and scored it. The ball just gets a little bit away from her, and they were able to recover pretty well. And we didn't do a great job. And again, at this point, which is kind of crazy, I'm not trying to say anything disparaging about how the game was officiated. They had no fouls in the fourth quarter until the 23 second mark. So
I didn't notice that watching it, but yeah, you can clearly see that there. That's interesting.
So, and for us being an aggressive team, again, we want to score in transition. We do a lot of drives to the basket. That's kind of wild for that to be the case. Again, I wish she would have just been able to get the ball into her little paws a little sooner, and she would have had a layup, wide open layup. So
then what's interesting here is after this foul, you guys end up on the baseline, which to me, I think should have been a sideline. I might be incorrect in that, but you guys end up with the baseline out of bounds. And I couldn't tell because I pulled all clips. I didn't pull the entire game, but did you take a timeout here to draw something up, or did you?
We did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. We took a timeout. And so again, I'm in charge of all the end of game situations. And weirdly enough, this day, I was like, okay, I talked through all the scenarios in my head and I don't ever do that, which is weird. But I had kind of talked and like prepared in my mind, what are we going to do in this situation, this situation, this situation? And I was like, okay, we have a baseline end of game, which I never prepare for or think about, because a lot, like we have sideline.
Yeah, it's rare to see the ball on the baseline for sure.
Yeah. So, but I was like, okay, this is what we're running now. This was a set I drew in the timeout. So we had not run this, but perfect execution. She's wide open. And she's a senior. She was the player of the year the previous year. Like, I thought this was in. I thought it's in. It's in.
We're good.
We're good. It's in, it's great screen. Again, she's wide open, great pass. It's just one of those days.
Sure.
And,
so then,
that I've worked with that player for 4 years, and I've never seen her miss that close of a shot. Like, she is money in practice, money in games. Like, it wasn't meant to be.
I hear you. Had you given them anything beyond the set? Like, were you talking about the defensive side of the ball as well? And were you operating on the assumption that you scored, or are you giving them both sides? Like, if we missed this, we scored that.
Nope. So in the timeout, we have a fact sheet. So I'm drawing the sets. We have a fact sheet. So we know how many fouls we have. So we don't do something silly like foul them. Right. We let them know, okay, we're -1. We have 4 fouls. We have 2 timeouts. The jump ball is, I don't think it shows it on here. Oh, the jump ball is Wyoming. So if we tie it up, it's their ball. Yeah. And we want them to know all that. So they're looking at like a piece of paper in the timeout that says all of that.
Oh, wow.
And
like that. So who would prepare that and it's as it's coming to the bench type deal?
Yeah. So I wonder if I could probably find it in my office somewhere. I do it other than the last minute. So we're doing that all throughout the game. So they're constantly knowing, okay, we're -10, we're +10, jump ball is ours, especially because like at the end of the quarters, you could, get a jump and we don't want someone to take a silly timeout if the jump ball is ours. So just making sure that they're constantly aware of those scenarios. So they're seeing that in every timeout. In the last minute, another assistant will make sure that is up to date, and because I'm drawing the play. So they're seeing that. We're not talking about it because then it's too many voices. But we're talking about when number 11 makes this shot, Wyoming's going to take a timeout because we know that's what they do. Now, other teams that we have played, we know that they're not going to take a timeout. They're going to just get the ball and go and maybe save the timeout because there's 20 seconds. So we're aware of different teams and what they're going to do. So we're saying 11's going to make the shot. They're going to take a timeout. We'll come back and talk about the defensive side once we score and they call the timeout. So
Right.
that's all we're talking about.
And then it ends up being your ball sideline out of bounds. Like I said, pulled all clips. What happened at the end of the clip there that it ended up being yours on the sideline out of bounds?
Maybe she traveled. I think she traveled.
So that would have been my guess, but you end up with another shot out of it, sideline out of bounds. Are you going to one that you're drawing up, or is this another one of your staples that you've used?
Yeah, so this is one that we had just recently put in. And again, we have 1 and 11 in a pick and roll situation, which is, again, your two best players. Now, again, they only had one foul with 18 seconds. So this is smart. They let the clock run out and then foul.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Brilliant.
It's hard end of game for sure with that much of a differential.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think that I would like to work on this year, and I don't know if other people have done this, but so knowing that there's one foul and that they're going to foul because there's a good enough amount of time left, is working on our players to try to dip under the defender's arm and get a shot off. So that's something that I want to add to like our end of game preparation situation to try and see if that's something that we can work on.
Well, I see a lot.
Imagine as she comes off, if she could dip under her arm and get that ball, she's at the free throw line and now we're not having to run another set.
For sure. So, I mean, this is something that, of course, James Harden is famous for, allowing them to get comfortable on your hip. And then that sort of low gather where it's out in front of you kind of encourages that defender to reach in, get a piece of your forearm, and take their arm up with them, as you're saying. I agree. Yeah. I think it'd be perfect. So then your baseline out of bounds, and it looks like a variation of the previous one that you had drawn up with the screen going in the opposite side. Was she supposed to go that way, or did she reject and it was the right choice?
The screen was set incorrectly. Yeah. I think she was trying to send her that way, so she'd be going to her right hand.
Right.
But we got the ball in.
Yeah. So
this is the backup plan. So again, in all my baseline plays, my biggest pet peeve is people who throw over the top as like your safety. Right. Because if you miss or if you have a quick defender, it's like a pick six, right? So it's a wide open layup on the other end. Yep. Our safety is always the baseline.
Okay.
So you can see one kind of posting up and holding her off. Every baseline set that we have, every baseline set that we have has a baseline safety as the place, because at worst, if it goes out of bounds off the baseline, you at least get to set your defense. Just kind of as a side note, even at the end of the game situation.
Like it. However, I think that means that your next clip makes you a little bit angry because it's kind of the lob over the top type deal, the pick six into it. But
so this was the play. I know I just said that we don't like that. 11 is a really good jumper. So this was the play. So again, it is for 11. She has the option out of this to fake the handoff and drive, give the handoff and roll. And now we have 11 and 1 in a 2-player game. That's the only time and the only player that we can go over the top two. And it's a call. No one else is allowed to do that.
Like it. And then she gets downhill and unfortunately draws the charge. You guys end up the other way. And
it wasn't a charge. It was out of bounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Forgive me for.
I'm pretty sure it was out of bounds.
So that's a no call, and then they just let the ball go out. And wow, that's interesting. So they go the other way. They make 2 free throws off of your foul. And then walk us through the last one, please, in terms of you're down 3. There's 3.4 seconds. You had another crack at it here. So we have a screen away on the help side of the floor, and then we've got some clear out action with a back screen on the ball side. We pop and it ends up top ball screen with your best 2 players again.
Yep.
And she unfortunately on the sit behind the contest comes and I think probably fouls her, but gets enough of the ball and the game is done.
Yeah.
exactly the way you drew it up? Is it what you wanted, shy of the result?
Yep. And again, learning from this. Now, one was just a sophomore, and again, very, very talented. The goal moving forward for her is to be able to come off of off-ball screens and be able to get these shots, and be able to get open. Similar to kind of how Steph Curry plays without the ball, how he's like able to move and get his feet set and come off, flare screens, down screens, stagger screens, floppy action. That's the goal moving forward for her. She loves an on ball. And again, she loves an on ball going to her left hand. She has a great step back three. She has range to there. Then she is crunch time killer. Like, she's made so many end of game shots that's who, down three, we have no other option but to go to her. And everyone knows that. So that's the hard part. And again, with the on ball action, hard because they know we're going to her and they can double it. And I have been saying for probably half a year, like, they're going to just double her in an end of game situation when we need a three. We need to be able to have her come off of off ball screens to be able to get open. So summer emphasis moving forward to be able to have her get those shots off.
It's in the skill development package for sure.
Yes, along with the defense.
I
didn't say that before.
I appreciate you taking the time. That's it in terms of what I have for clips, unless somebody has a question they want to jump in at all. This was fantastic. I know going back and watching these tight ones can be painful sometimes, but there's a lot in there, and that was done really well from my perspective as a coach. So, you had a lot of cracks at it. The ball just unfortunately didn't fall at the end of the game there. And it was fabulous. And I'm so thankful for you sitting down and being able to listen, learn from you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I feel like this is a little bit of therapy. I feel so much better. And it makes me, like, kind of talking through it, realize like we have a good plan moving forward to kind of fix all of those things. So now I'm like really excited. Just got to get the kids back on campus. Yeah. So I appreciate it. I was like, yesterday, I literally had to force myself. I haven't watched that game because it's just like, it's heavy. It felt like this year was so much, and that was such an opportunity to have a good feeling, that I felt I didn't feel good yesterday after watching it, but now I feel like lighter and better, and I really, really appreciate it.
Love it. I appreciate you. Thank you. So for everybody, please, tune in next week. Everybody who listens, I appreciate you guys so much as well. I know the show is incredibly niche, but I hope there continues to be value for all of you guys and ladies that listen, and for the coaches that jump on the call and share their perspective and engage in chats and all that. Appreciate you guys as well. Mandy, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. If you want to hang out for a little bit after the call, please feel free, but I'm going to stop the recording here. And I look forward to next week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Where is my stop? There we go.